All right, now we've got all of our markers placed, and we have the upper cranial portion set at 5 millimeters and the lower facial portion set at 10 millimeters. So let's talk for a second about the exceptions to the rule. What is it that's going to be 15 millimeters? What's going to be 20 millimeters? I'm only talking in units of 5 just so this is very clear and simple, because as I've mentioned before, there's variety between the genders, between the races, and then there's also some difference in terms of which points we want to be focusing on. So we're just looking at a very simplified version. So the exceptions. One of the first exceptions that we can look at is right here at the coronoid process. So we've got this set to 10, but this could be somewhere closer to 15 or 20. I'm going to set this to about 15, and we'll say that this is a 15 plus. Meaning it can be 15 to 20, give or take. Let's just draw out our line. Make sure that line is nice and steady. Mask the end so it stays capped. Okay, and you can already see that starting to fill in some of the space underneath the zygomatic and the cheekbone. We'll set the masseter at about the same. But you can already start to tell that that's something that's going to be probably on the minus side. So on a male, we're probably going to keep it at about 15 plus, depending. But on a female, that's going to slide more towards the negative, and you may put that back to 10. Anyways, we'll leave these two as exceptions that go to about 15. The coronoid process is 15 plus. The masseter is 15 minus, meaning it's going to tend towards the smaller side of that. Okay, now the mid first molar. This is going to be a significantly bit larger. We're going to go more towards 20. And you can already see it starting to match that cheekbone. So that's what we want. Then the bottom mid first molar. That one's now important as well. This one we're going to put at about 15. So 15 minus, whereas the upper molar is 20 minus, depending on the fat, the infraorbital triangle, things like that. But we've got the measurement there. Canine fossa. The canine fossa, we're going to move out to 20. Straight out. It's going to help us understand the infraorbital triangle, position the nostrils, all of that stuff. And then there's one more that we can look at, and that's the zygomatic attachment. I don't have that one listed right now. But if we were to take the zygomatic that we've got slightly above this, I want to at least provide you with a perspective on it. If you move this down so that it's closer to where the zygomatic major attaches, you see how I have to push that back? It becomes 10, and we end up moving that forward. But I'm not going to sweat that one right now. I just wanted to offer that as one more piece of the puzzle But we're going to let the zygomatic major muscle and the infraorbital triangle start to help us solve all of that. Also, let's make absolutely certain from a side view that we have our canine fossa placed correctly. There's a telltale sign that I'm getting this wrong, and that's that there's some strong overlap from essentially where the nostril is going to be and let's say the nose. Philtrum, boom, boom. There's some strong overlap and where that canine fossa is. We want to actually be moving that backwards a little bit more behind the zygomatic attachment here, or the zygomatic marker, I should say. And that'll fix us up quite a bit. That'll get us right close to that nostril without going too far over. Remembering that this is going to be a 20 minus, so chances are we're not going to reach up to that level. So I'm going to isolate it, Control-Shift-Click, Control-Shift-Click. Alright. And now we can show everything. Solo mode is off. Transparency is on. Let's place it inwards. But keep our height. Okay, there we go. We've moved it out and given it a bit more of an angle, and then we'll just play, see how this works out. Going somewhere between 15 and 20 will probably fix us up. This also assumes that our skull is really perfectly sculpted at this point, and that's one of the key things that you have to keep in mind about these measurements. You're going to be adjusting them because your skull's not going to be right. Forensics starts with the skull. It's a cast of an actual skull, so they never have to worry about their skull being right or wrong, and that is going to be our problem. So that's one of the other reasons why we keep this loose. We just play it as it comes. So our forensic markers are down. And as we just saw earlier, let's just sketch this profile, see what happens. So we're going to be pulling the skin out. The nose is going to come out. And in like that. You get a sense of how much depth there is to that, to the lips, to all of these areas. Keep this in mind when you're sculpting. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of stuff happening in here that we have to kind of be aware of. So that's the kind of thickness we're talking about. The last thing I want to mention about when we talk about the thickness of these skins and these markers is just another little rule that forensics has. Just a little note I found in my research. Assuming that your skull is correctly positioned, it's aligned in the right axes, you can theoretically draw a line straight down from where the nasal bone ends, bisect that line, and use the distance from one end, so we'll call this, let's do it up here, A should equal A. B then equals B. C comes all the way from this imaginary line moving straight down, right over to the bone. You then carry over to the other side and it now matches up. If this is accurate, this would assume that our nose is flattening right in this area. So there is evidence to suggest that you can correctly correctly place the profile of somebody's nose from knowing the inside bone curvature of the nose. That's an actual predicator of what the nose is going to be shaped like. So that's the last little bit in terms of measurement. The next thing that we need to do is we need to be laying on the muscles. And we're going to look at the forensic markers. We're going to turn them on and we're going to turn them off. They're not something for us to go by 100%. They're just going to help us understand the thickness of our muscle and how far out along the surface it's going to go.